The space station called Harmony's Rest had been running for 40 years without a single emergency lockdown. It was a peaceful place. The Valanthi who lived and worked there were calm people. They did not like fighting or danger. They liked trade and conversation and the quiet hum of a station that worked the way it should. That peace ended on a Tuesday morning when the human freighter Wandering Dawn docked at Port 7. Commander Threll was sitting in his chair on the command deck when the alarm went off. He had 4 eyes, all of them a deep orange color, and right now all 4 of them went wide with fear. The screen in front of him was flashing red. The words on it made his blood run cold. Apex predator detected. Classification: human, threat level. Maximum. HREL stood up so fast that his chair fell over behind him. The other officers on the deck turned to look at him. They had all seen the alert. They all knew what it meant. A human was on the station. Threll had never seen a human in person. He had only read about them in reports and watched old videos from the first contact files. Those videos still gave him bad dreams sometimes. He had seen a human lift a cargo container that weighed 300 kilos. He had seen another human fall from a height of 6 meters and simply stand up like nothing had happened. He had read about how they chased their prey for hours and hours until it collapsed from exhaustion. He had learned that they ate the flesh of other animals without feeling bad about it. These were not normal beings. These were monsters from a death world. The Valanthi home planet was gentle. The weather was mild. The animals were small and harmless. When the Valanthi first learned about Earth, they could not believe such a place existed. A planet where the ground shook and broke open. A planet where water fell from the sky in violent storms. A planet where huge animals with sharp teeth hunted and killed each other every single day, and humans had not just survived on that planet. They had conquered it. They had become the most dangerous thing on a world full of dangerous things. Now one of them was here. On his station, Threll pressed the button for the station-wide communication system. His voice came out shaky, but he forced himself to speak clearly. All residents must return to their quarters immediately. This is a full lockdown. Do not leave your rooms until further notice. This is not a drill. He turned to his security chief, a tall Valanthi named Corin. Corin was one of the bravest people Threll knew, but even he looked scared. Send the elite guard to the docking area, Threll said. Full weapons. Containment protocol. Corin nodded and ran from the room. Down at docking port 7, Katie Morgan had no idea that she had just caused a panic. She was a cargo specialist from a small town in Nebraska, and she had been working on freighter ships for about 3 years now. The Wandering Dawn was stopping at Harmony's Rest to refuel, and Katie had decided to stretch her legs while they waited. She stepped off the ship and into the docking corridor. It was a nice station, she thought. Clean floors. Soft lighting. There were a few Valanthi walking around, and she smiled at them. She had never met Valanthi before, but she thought they were pretty. They were tall and covered in soft fur with long ears and big eyes. They reminded her of the foxes that used to live near her grandmother's farm. One of the Valanthi saw her and stopped walking. It stared at her with eyes that were very, very wide. Katie waved. "Hi there," she said. The Valanthi made a sound like a squeak and ran away. Katie frowned. That was strange. She looked around and saw that other Valanthi were doing the same thing. They were pressing themselves against the walls. They were ducking into doorways. Some of them were running as fast as they could in the other direction. Hello? Katie called out. Is everything okay? No one answered. Within 30 seconds, the entire corridor was empty. Katie stood alone in the middle of it, confused and a little worried. Had she done something wrong? Did she smell bad? She had showered that morning. She was wearing clean clothes. She had even put on her nice jacket, the blue one with the flowers on it. She heard a loud sound, like heavy doors slamming shut. Then the lights in the corridor changed from soft white to flashing red. A voice came over the speakers, speaking in a language she did not understand. Then it repeated in broken English, all beings stay in rooms. Danger, do not move. Katie's heart started beating faster. What kind of danger? Was there a fire? A hull breach? She looked around for a sign or a map that might tell her where to go. Before she could find one, she heard footsteps. Lots of footsteps. They were coming toward her, and they were coming fast. A group of Valanthi came around the corner. These ones were different from the others. They were wearing armor. They were carrying weapons that glowed with blue light. Their faces were hard and focused, like soldiers going into battle. There were 10 of them. They spread out in a half-circle around Katie, their weapons pointed at her. Katie raised her hand slowly. "Whoa," she said. "Hey, take it easy. What is going on?" The leader of the group was a Valanthi with darker fur than the others. He had a scar on his face that ran from his forehead down to his chin. He spoke in a deep, serious voice. "Do not move, human. You are contained." Katie blinked. "Contained? Why? What did I do?" The leader did not answer. He was staring at her like she was a bomb that might explode at any moment. His hands were shaking slightly on his weapon. Katie looked at the soldiers around her. She looked at their armor and their guns. She looked at the fear in their eyes. And she realized something that made her feel very, very confused. They were scared of her. These tall, armed soldiers in their fancy armor were terrified of a 5'6" cargo worker from Nebraska who had never been in a fight in her entire life. Katie lowered her hands a little. "Look," she said gently. "I think there has been some kind of mistake. I am not dangerous. I just came off my ship to walk around for a bit. That is all." The leader shook his head. "We know what you are," he said. "We have seen the files. You are an apex predator from the death world. You are one of the most dangerous beings in the known galaxy." Katie stared at him. She did not know what to say to that. "Me?" she finally asked. "Dangerous? I work in cargo. I move boxes. The most exciting thing I did last week was fix a broken coffee machine." The leader did not seem to believe her. He kept his weapon raised. "You will come with us," he said. "You will be held in a secure location until your ship leaves. Do you understand?" Katie sighed. She did not want to argue with people who had guns. She nodded slowly. "Okay," she said. "Sure, I will come with you. But I really think you have the wrong idea about me." The soldiers led her away. As they walked, Katie noticed that every door they passed was sealed shut. Every corridor was empty. The entire station had gone into hiding because of her. It was, she thought, the strangest thing that had ever happened to her. And she had no idea that it was about to get even stranger. The soldiers took Katie to a small room near the security office. It was not a prison cell, but it was close. There was a bench along one wall, a small window that looked out into the corridor, and nothing else. The door locked behind her with a heavy click. Katie sat down on the bench and tried to understand what was happening. She had been called an apex predator, a dangerous being from a death world. The soldiers had looked at her like she was some kind of monster. But Katie had never hurt anyone in her life. She had grown up on a farm where her grandmother taught her to be gentle with every living thing. She had spent her childhood feeding orphaned animals with bottles and helping injured birds learn to fly. Again, the idea that anyone would be scared of her was almost funny, almost. She could hear voices outside the door. The soldiers were talking in their own language. She caught a few words in English here and there. Words like dangerous and containment and threat level. Katie leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. She would just have to wait. The freighter would be refueled in a few hours, and then she could go back to her ship and leave this strange place behind. But while Katie sat in that small room, something else was happening on the other side of the station. In the residential area where families lived. A caretaker named Voss was trying to count heads. The lockdown had happened so fast that not everyone had made it back to their quarters. Voss was responsible for a group of young cubs whose parents worked in the engineering section. When the alarm went off, he had gathered them up and started leading them home, but somewhere along the way, 3 of them had gotten lost. Myra, Toph, and little Sen were siblings. Myra was the oldest at 7 years old. Toph was 5. And Sen was only 3, barely old enough to walk without, stumbling over her own feet When the alarm had started flashing and the voice had come over the speakers, the three cubs had been playing near a water fountain in the commercial section. They had not heard Voss calling for them. The noise and the flashing lights had scared them, and they had run in the wrong direction. Now they were alone. The commercial section was usually busy and bright. Shops sold food and clothes and toys. Villanthi of all ages walked around, talking and laughing. But now it was dark and empty. All the shops were closed. All the lights had been turned down to save power during the lockdown. Myra held her brother and sister close. She was trying to be brave, but she was scared too. She had never seen the station like this before. It felt like a different place. A scary place. We need to find Voss, Myra said. He will be looking for us. Tav nodded. His ears were flat against his head, which was a sign of fear in Villanthi cubs. I want to go home, he said. I want Mother. Sen did not say anything. She was too young to really understand what was happening. She just knew that everything was wrong and she did not like it. She started to cry. Myra pulled her little sister closer. She said, "It is okay. We will find our way home." Do not cry, but Sen could not stop crying. Her high-pitched wails echoed through the empty corridors. The sound bounced off the walls and filled the darkness around them, on the other side of the station. Katie heard something. She had been sitting in the small room for about 20 minutes when a distant sound reached her ears. It was faint, but she recognized it right away. It was the sound of something young and scared. Something crying. Katie stood up and walked to the window. She pressed her face against the glass and looked out into the corridor. There was nothing there. The soldiers had gone somewhere else. She was alone. The crying continued. It was coming from far away, somewhere deeper in the station. Katie thought about what the soldiers had told her. Stay here. Do not move. Wait for your ship. But that sound, that crying, it pulled at something inside her. It reminded her of the baby animals on her grandmother's farm. The ones that had lost their mothers. The ones that needed help. She could not just sit here and listen to that sound. Katie tried the door. It was locked, of course. But the lock was electronic, and when she looked closely, she could see that the panel beside the door was old and worn. There was a gap between the panel and the wall where the screws had come loose. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a small tool that she used for fixing cargo containers. It was thin and flat, perfect for getting into tight spaces. She slid it behind the panel and felt around until she found the wires. Katie had learned a lot of things working on freighter ships. One of those things was how to bypass simple electronic locks. It was not something she did often, but when cargo doors got stuck, sometimes it was the only way to get them open. A few seconds later, the door clicked and slid open. Katie stepped out into the corridor and listened. The crying was still there, faint but clear. She followed it. She walked through empty hallways and past sealed doors. The red emergency lights made everything look strange and unfamiliar. She had no idea where she was going. She just followed the sound. After about 10 minutes, she found them. There was a clothing shop with a big display table near the front. The table had a long cloth hanging down to the floor. And under that table, huddled together in the darkness, were 3 small creatures. Katie crouched down and looked at them. They looked like fox kits, she thought. Small and furry, with big ears and big eyes. Their fur was a mix of silver and cream colors. They were shaking with fear. The cubs saw her and froze. Their eyes went wide. One of them, the smallest one, stopped crying and stared at her with her mouth open. Katie knew she must look scary to them. She was bigger than them. She had those forward-facing eyes that the soldiers had talked about. She probably looked exactly like the predator they thought she was. So she did what her grandmother had taught her to do with scared animals. She made herself small. She sat down on the floor, crossing her legs. She lowered her head so she was not looking directly at them, and she started making soft sounds. Not words, really. Just gentle noises. The kind of sounds you make to calm a frightened puppy or a nervous cat. Hey there, she said quietly. It is okay. I am not going to hurt you. I promise. The cubs did not move. They watched her with those big, frightened eyes. Katie slowly reached into her jacket pocket. She always kept some food with her, a habit from years of long shifts on the freighter. Today she had a protein bar, the kind with chocolate chips that she liked to eat during breaks. She pulled it out and broke off a small piece. Then she held it out on her open palm, the way her grandmother had taught her to feed nervous horses. "Are you hungry?" she asked. "This is food." "It is good. You can have some if you want." The three cubs looked at the food. Then they looked at each other. Then they looked back at Katie. For a long moment. Nothing happened. Then the smallest one, the one who had been crying, started to move. She crawled out from under the table, very slowly, her nose twitching. She came closer and closer until she was right in front of Katie's hand. She sniffed the food, then she took it and ate it. Katie smiled. "There you go," she said. "That was not so bad, was it?" The little one looked up at her. Her eyes were still wet from crying, but she was not shaking anymore. She made a small sound, almost like a purr, and then, to Katie's surprise, she climbed into her lap. Katie sat very still as the small creature climbed into her lap. She did not want to scare her. The little one settled against her stomach and made that purring sound again. Her fur was soft, softer than anything Katie had ever touched. The other two cubs watched from under the table. The middle one, a boy with darker patches on his ears, looked curious now instead of scared. The oldest one, a girl with a stripe of white fur down her back, still seemed nervous. Katie broke off more pieces of the protein bar and held them out. "Come on," she said gently. "There is enough for everyone." The middle one came out first. He grabbed a piece of food and stuffed it in his mouth. Then he sat down next to Katie and looked up at her like he was waiting for more. The oldest one took longer. She watched Katie for a full minute before she finally crawled out from under the table. She took the food but did not sit down. She stood a few steps away, still ready to run if she needed to. Katie did not push her. She just sat there, feeding them bits of protein bar and talking to them in a quiet voice. "My name is Katie," she said. "What are your names?" The cubs did not answer. Maybe they did not understand her language. Maybe they were too young to talk. But they seemed to like the sound of her voice. The little one in her lap had closed her eyes and was falling asleep. Katie looked at them more closely now. She noticed something she had not seen before. Their fur was dirty. The little one had something sticky matted into the fur on her chest. The middle one had what looked like grease on his tail. And the oldest one had dust and dirt all over her back legs. They must have been playing somewhere messy before the lockdown, Katie thought. And now they were stuck here, dirty and scared and alone. She looked around the commercial section. Most of the shops were locked, but she could see a sign down the corridor that looked familiar. It had a symbol that looked like water droplets. A refresher station, maybe? Like a bathroom. "Okay, little ones," Katie said. "How about we get you cleaned up? You look like you have been rolling around in an engine room." She stood up slowly, holding the smallest cub in her arms. The other two followed her without being asked. They had decided, in the way that young creatures often decide such things, that this strange tall being was now their friend. Katie found the refresher station. The door was not locked, which was good. Inside there were sinks with running water, soap dispensers on the walls, and a few benches along one side. It was not perfect, but it would work. She set the little one down on a bench and looked at the soap dispensers. She pressed the button and some kind of blue gel came out. She smelled it. It was not bad, but it was very strong. Too strong for babies, she thought. Then she remembered something. In her jacket pocket, she had a small bottle of shampoo. She always carried it with her because the soap on the freighter was harsh and made her skin itch. This shampoo was gentle, made for sensitive skin. It smelled like lavender. "This will have to do," she said to the cubs. "I hope you like flowers." She turned on the water in one of the sinks and tested the temperature with her hand. It was warm, not too hot and not too cold. Perfect. The little one went first. Katie held her carefully and lowered her into the sink. The cub made a surprised sound when she touched the water, but she did not try to run away. Katie used her hands to wet the fur, then added a little bit of shampoo and started to work it in gently. The sticky stuff in the fur turned out. to be some kind of food paste. It came out easily with a little rubbing. Katie was careful not to get soap in the cub's eyes. She remembered doing this same thing with puppies on her grandmother's farm. The trick was to be gentle and patient. When she was done washing, she rinsed off all the soap and lifted the little one out of the sink. There were paper towels in a dispenser on the wall. She grabbed a big handful and started to dry the wet fur. The cub purred the whole time. Her eyes were half closed with happiness. When she was dry, her fur was fluffy and soft and smelled like lavender flowers. "One down," Katie said with a smile. "Who is next?" The middle one stepped forward. He seemed excited now, like he wanted to see what the fuss was about. Katie picked him up and put him in the sink. While Katie was washing the cubs, the elite guard was tearing the station apart looking for her. Captain Vorath had received the report that the human had escaped from the holding room. He could not believe it. The door had been locked. There were supposed to be guards outside. How had she gotten out? It did not matter. What mattered was finding her before she could hurt someone. Vorath led his team through the corridors. They checked every room, every closet, every space big enough to hide a human. "They found nothing. She is hunting," one of his soldiers said. "That is what they do. They stalk their prey." Vorath shook his head. "She is not hunting. She does not know where anything is on this station. She is lost and looking for a way out," but even as he said it, he was not sure he believed it. Everything he knew about humans told him they were dangerous. They were not the kind of beings who got lost and wandered around harmlessly. They were predators, killers. His communicator buzzed. He answered it. "Captain," a voice said. "We found her biosignature. Level 7, Section 12. The refresher station. Vorath felt his heart beat faster. Level 7 was the residential area. There were families there, children. "All units," he said into his communicator. "Converge on Level 7, Section 12. Maximum caution. The predator has moved into the residential zone." Back in the refresher station, Katie had finished washing all 3 cubs. They were sitting on the bench in a row, fluffy and clean and happy. The oldest one had finally relaxed. She was leaning against Katie's leg like they had been friends for years. Katie looked at them and felt warm inside. They were such sweet little things. She had no idea who their parents were or where they belonged, but she hoped someone was looking for them. "They were too young to be on their own, okay," she said. "Now we need to find your family. Do you know where you live?" The cubs looked at her with blank eyes. They did not understand the question. Katie sighed. "I guess we will have to figure it out together," she heard a sound from outside. Footsteps, a lot of them. Then the door burst open and soldiers poured into the room. Vorath was in front. He had his weapon raised and ready. His eyes scanned the room, looking for signs of violence, blood, anything that would tell him what the predator had done. What he found made no sense at all. The human was sitting on the floor. 3 Vilanthe cubs were with her. They were clean and dry and fluffy. One of them was in her lap. The other 2 were pressed against her sides. They were all looking at him with big, curious eyes. The cubs did not look scared. They did not look hurt. They looked happy. Vorath lowered his weapon by an inch. He did not know what to say. Katie looked up at him and frowned. "You know," she said, "you are being very loud." "I just got 'em all calm and sleepy. Can you please keep it down?" Vorath stared at her. His brain was having trouble processing what he was seeing. The little one in Katie's lap yawned and snuggled closer to her chest. Her small paws twitched as she started to dream. Captain Vorath stood in the doorway of the refresher station with his weapon half raised. His soldiers were behind him, waiting for orders. But Vorath could not think of any orders to give. This was wrong. Everything about this was wrong. He had prepared for a fight. He had prepared to find the human crouched over a victim. He had prepared for blood and screaming and the worst things he could imagine. Instead he found this, a human woman sitting on the floor with 3 Vilanthe cubs sleeping against her. The room smelled like flowers. The cubs were clean and dry and clearly not afraid at all. Vorath lowered his weapon all the way. His soldiers did the same, though they still looked confused and nervous. "What is happening here?" Vorath asked. His voice came out quieter than he meant it to. Katie looked up at him. She was still frowning about the noise. "These little ones were lost," she said. "I found them hiding under a table in the commercial section. They were scared and dirty, so I brought them here to clean them up." Voreth looked at the cubs. He recognized them now. They were the children of Specialist Denna from the engineering section. The whole station had been looking for them since the lockdown started. "You cleaned them?" he asked. Katie nodded. "They had food paste and grease in their fur. I used my shampoo. It is gentle, made for sensitive skin. I hope that is okay. I did not have anything else to use." Vorth did not know what to say. He turned to look at his soldiers. They were all staring at the human with expressions of complete confusion. One of the soldiers, a young female named Risa, spoke up. "Captain," she said slowly, "are those cubs really not afraid of her?" They all looked at the cubs. The little one Sen was sound asleep in Katie's lap. Her small chest rose and fell with each breath. Toph had his head resting on Katie's knee, his eyes closed. Even Myra, the oldest and most careful of the three, was leaning against Katie's arm with a look of total peace on her face. Cubs did not act this way around predators. Cubs ran and hid and screamed when they sensed danger. These cubs looked like they had found the safest place in the galaxy. Voreth slowly put his weapon away. He walked closer to Katie and the cubs. He moved carefully, not wanting to wake them. "The little one trusts you," he said. "That is strange," Katie shrugged. "Little ones usually do. I grew up on a farm. I spent most of my childhood taking care of baby animals. Orphaned lambs, abandoned kittens, injured birds. My grandmother taught me how to be gentle with them." Voreth sat down on one of the benches. He was still trying to understand what was happening. Everything he knew about humans told him that this woman should be dangerous. But his own eyes told him something different. "The reports say your kind are apex predators," he said. "They say you evolved to hunt and kill. They say your homeworld is one of the most dangerous planets in the galaxy." Katie nodded. "That is all true, I guess. Earth can be pretty rough. But that does not mean we go around hunting everything we see. Most of us are actually pretty friendly." Voreth thought about this. On his homeworld, predators were simple. They hunted. They killed. They ate. There was no room for gentleness or kindness in a predator's heart, but this human was different. She had found 3 lost cubs, and instead of hurting them, she had taken care of them. She had washed their fur and calmed their fears and let them sleep in her lap. "I do not understand," Voreth admitted. "Why would you help them? They are not your kind. They are nothing like you." Katie looked down at the sleeping cubs. A small smile appeared on her face. "They were scared," she said simply. "They needed help. What else was I supposed to do?" Voreth had no answer for that. The door to the refresher station opened again. More Vilanthi came in, but these were not soldiers. At the front of the group was Commander Threll himself, his 4 orange eyes wide with worry. Behind him was a female Vilanthi with cream-colored fur and a look of panic on her face. It was Denna, the mother of the 3 cubs. Dnna pushed past the commander and the soldiers. Her eyes found her children immediately. They were there, all 3 of them, safe and clean and sleeping peacefully. But they were sleeping in the lap of a human. Denna froze. Her instincts screamed at her to grab her cubs and run. This was a predator. This was one of the most dangerous beings in the known galaxy. Her children were in terrible danger, but then she looked more closely. She saw how gently the human was holding little Sen. She saw how Toph and Myra were pressed against her sides without fear. She saw the soft expression on the human's face. The cubs stirred at the sound of their mother's voice. Myra woke up first. She blinked her eyes and looked around. "Mother," she said sleepily. Dnna felt tears forming in her eyes. She rushed forward and fell to her knees in front of her children. "My babies," she said. "My sweet babies. Are you okay? Are you hurt?" Katie carefully lifted Sen and handed her to Denna. The little one made a small noise of complaint at being moved. But then she smelled her mother's familiar scent and snuggled into her arms. "They are fine," Katie said. A little dirty when I found them, but fine. I gave them some food and cleaned them up. They've been sleeping for the last little while. Denna looked at the human. Up close, she could see the forward-facing eyes, the flat face, the strange smooth skin, all the features of a predator. But she could also see something else: kindness, warmth, care. You helped them, Denna said. Her voice was shaking. Why? Katie smiled. They were lost and scared, she said. I know what that feels like. I could not just leave them alone. Toph and Myra had fully woken up now. They climbed into their mother's arms, adding to the pile of cubs she was trying to hold. Denna pulled them all close and held them tight. She looked at Katie with new eyes. All her life she had been taught to fear humans. She had heard the stories and seen the reports. She had believed that humans were monsters who would hurt her without hesitation, but this human had saved her children. This monster had washed their fur with her own shampoo and held them while they slept. Diana lowered her head in a deep bow. It was the Valanthi gesture of deepest gratitude, reserved for those who had saved a life. Thank you, she said. Thank you for protecting my cubs. Katie blinked in surprise. She was not used to such formal gestures. But she could see how much it meant to the mother. You are welcome, Katie said gently. They are beautiful children. You should be proud. Commander Threll stepped forward. He had been watching everything in silence, his 4 eyes taking in every detail. He looked at Katie Morgan, the human who had caused such panic on his station. He looked at the 3 cubs who had trusted her completely. He looked at the mother who was now bowing to her in gratitude. Perhaps, he thought, the reports about humans were not complete. Perhaps there was something the data had missed. Commander Threll called off the lockdown 1 hour after the incident in the refresher station. The red lights stopped flashing. The doors unsealed. The residents of Harmony's Rest slowly came out of their quarters. Confused and curious about what had happened, the story spread quickly. A human had been on the station. The apex predator alarms had gone off. The elite guard had been called. And then somehow, the dangerous predator had turned out to be a young woman who spent the lockdown washing lost cubs with her shampoo. Some Valanthi did not believe it at first. It sounded too strange to be true. But then they saw the video from the refresher station's security cameras. They saw Katie Morgan sitting on the floor with 3 sleeping cubs in her lap. They saw the gentle way she handled them. They saw her smile when she looked at them. The video was shared across the station within hours. Katie did not know she was becoming famous. She was sitting in the station's main cafeteria, eating a meal that the staff had given her for free. They had insisted. They said it was the least they could do after what she had done for Specialist Denna's children. Captain Vorath sat across from her. He had taken off his armor and was wearing casual clothes. He looked different without his weapons. Less scary. More like a normal person. I owe you an apology, he said. We treated you like a criminal. We pointed weapons at you. We locked you in a room. Katie shrugged. You were scared, she said. I understand. If some giant creature showed up on my station, I would probably be scared too. Vorath shook his head. But you were not a threat. We should have seen that. How could you have known? Katie asked. You had never met a human before. All you had were reports and data files. Those can only tell you so much. Vorath was quiet for a moment. He was thinking about what Katie had said earlier. About how humans were friendly, despite coming from a death world. Can I ask you something? He said. Sure. Rath leaned forward. On your world, there are many dangerous animals. Predators with sharp teeth and claws. Creatures that hunt and kill. How do your people survive among such things? Katie thought about the question. It was a good one. Well, she said slowly, we used to fight them. A long time ago, we had to be tough and smart and strong just to stay alive. But over time, we learned something else. We learned that we did not have to kill everything that scared us. Some of those dangerous animals could become our friends. We tamed wolves and turned them into dogs. We raised wild cats and made them into pets. We found ways to live alongside the dangerous creatures instead of just fighting them. Vorath's ears twitched with interest. You made friends with predators? Katie smiled. We made friends with everything. Birds, horses, cows, sheep. We even keep fish and snakes and spiders as pets. Humans have this thing where we see a creature, even a dangerous one, and we want to take care of it. We want to give it a name and feed it and make sure it is happy. Vorath stared at her. That is strange, he said. Katie laughed. Yeah, it kind of is. Over the next few days, Katie became something of a celebrity on Harmony's Rest. Valanthi, who had run away from her before, now came up to shake her hand and thank her. Cubs asked their parents if they could meet the nice human who had saved the lost babies. Shop owners gave her gifts and refused to let her pay for anything. Denna visited her every day. She brought her cubs with her. Little Sen would climb into Katie's lap the moment she saw her, making that happy purring sound. Toph would show her drawings he had made. Myra would tell her about her day at school. Katie loved every minute of it. On her last day at the station, before the Wandering Dawn was scheduled to leave, Commander Threll called her to his office. Katie walked into the room, expecting some kind of official goodbye. What she found was a ceremony. The room was full of people. Vorath was there, along with his soldiers. Denna and her cubs stood near the front. Station officials and ordinary residents filled the rest of the space. Threll stood behind his desk with a small box in his hands. Katie Morgan, he said in a formal voice. On behalf of the residents of Harmony's Rest, I want to present you with this gift. It is a small token of our gratitude for what you did during the lockdown. He opened the box. Inside was a piece of fabric folded into a neat square. It was woven in beautiful patterns of silver and cream, the same colors as the cub's fur. It is a blanket, Threll explained. Made in the traditional Valanthi style. We give them to those who have done great kindness to our people. Katie took the blanket from the box. It was soft and warm and beautiful. She felt tears forming in her eyes. Thank you, she said. This is wonderful. I do not know what to say. Dnna stepped forward. She was holding little Sen in her arms. The cub reached out toward Katie with her small paws. Say you will come back someday, Denna said. My children want to see you again. Katie smiled through her tears. I will, she said. I promise. When Katie returned to the Wandering Dawn, her crewmates wanted to know everything. They had heard the rumors and seen some of the videos. They could not believe that quiet, gentle Katie had caused a full station lockdown. Katie told them the story from the beginning. She told them about the alarms and the soldiers and the locked room. She told them about the lost cubs and the shampoo and the sleeping babies in her lap. She told them about Denna and Vorath and Commander Threll. When she was done, the captain of the Wandering Dawn shook his head in amazement. Only you, Katie, he said. Only you could turn a predator alert into a babysitting session. Katie laughed and went to her cabin. She laid the Valanthi blanket on her bed and looked at it for a long time. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever owned. Months later, a report circulated through the Galactic Council's Science Division. It was an update to Humanity's File, written by a xenobiologist, who had studied the incident on Harmony's Rest. The report confirmed everything the old files had said. Humans were indeed apex predators from a Category 12 death world. They had forward-facing eyes for hunting. They could run for hours without stopping. They healed from injuries that would kill most species. They were, by any measure, among the most dangerous beings in the known galaxy, but the report added something new. A note at the very end that would slowly spread to every species that encountered humanity, humans. The note said, had an unusual trait. They formed attachments to small and vulnerable creatures. They adopted them, cared for them, and protected them fiercely. This trait had no clear survival benefit. It seemed to come from something deeper, something in the human heart. That could not be explained by simple biology. The report suggested a new classification code for human encounters. One that would warn other species about what to expect. Apex predator, the code read. Exercise extreme caution, and then below that, known to adopt, on a freighter ship somewhere in the galaxy. Katie Morgan wrapped herself in a silver and cream blanket and dreamed of little ones with soft fur and big eyes. She smiled in her sleep. And in a station far behind her, Three cubs who still smelled faintly of lavender told everyone who would listen about the nice human who had kept them safe when they were lost and scared. Their mother listened to the story every time, and every time she felt grateful. The galaxy was a big place, full of strange beings and unknown dangers. But sometimes the scariest creatures turned out to be the kindest. Sometimes the predator was also the protector, and sometimes the monster washed your fur with her shampoo and held you while you slept. That was the truth about humans. That was what the data files had missed. They were apex predators who wanted to take care of everything. They were dangerous beings who could not resist a baby in need. They were killers who would fight the whole galaxy to protect something. Small and scared, they were humans, and the galaxy was only beginning to understand what that really meant.